So yeah, so this is welcome. This is just really the overview of value add. Tim, just for your purposes, I know Stacey's heard this a couple of times. So value add was formed in 2007. I was actually working at SAA at the time, the profitable SAA at that time, and I found that young people coming into the organization were just a little bit overwhelmed. I mean, SAA back then, and I guess even still now, is quite an overwhelming business. There's over 10,000 employees. You got this massive head office center out in the middle of at the airport there. So when you come in, you can really be overwhelmed. And two things that I found were kind of lacking. One of them was a sort of sense of confidence in order to be able to navigate an organization like that. And then the other thing was just when some of them stayed on and did well, in some cases were promoted, their just ability to navigate leadership positions was a challenge. So it was formed then, and I did it really from a part-time point of view. And when it was formed then, it was really formed as an NPO. But an NPO that never really went out to look for funding. I tended for the next 10 years after that, funded a lot of the initiatives myself financially, because I was actually working at the same time. Today, it's both an NPO and a PTY. We really don't use much of the NPO part unless somebody very specifically stipulates that they want to donate into an NPO, which is possible. But we use the PTY because we commercialize the model. And just a little bit of history around why I ended up having to commercialize the model is that in 2020 or 2019, when I left formal employment permanently, going into 2020, and then COVID hit, I had to look at reposition my whole approach to this in terms of how I was actually going to navigate sustaining myself as well as the business over a period of time. So typically accountants get very excited when you come up with models that don't actually make sense to them. And he basically said that if you're going to, in any way or form, turn this into a commercial model, you're just going to have to make it a PTY as opposed to an NPO. So we do still have both. Value add trading as VMR Holding Group, which is part of the PTY side, and value add as the NPO, which I say we don't really use that much. So the vision was to build generations who make informed and considered choices around themselves very specifically, and understanding that that would define who they were. We started off with one module, one program, which was the self-mastery program, and I'll explain how that's mushroomed over the last few months. Again, you're going to hear the word inspiration used quite consistently. The idea, I have a very strong belief in the principle that you can't motivate that which is not inspired. So the starting point is inspiration, and it's just a little something that I believe in terms of how people can visualize, see, access, people who they perceive to be making it, and therefore that gives them some aspiration to be able to do the same. And obviously a lot of things around choices, young people having to make better choices for themselves, and this is what we try to do within Value Add to ensure that they're making those choices successfully. As I said, we use the word inspiration quite consistently because that's if you ask me what's the one thing a leader should be doing, inspiring. That's it. Job spec written and fulfilled. So it's imperative that they understand the construct of this, because it has what I call a ricochet effect on people around them, and that's what actually brings out the best in individuals. So in order for you to be able to do this, you need to have strong elements of personal excellence. So there's a lot of self that you have to be working on, and strive for personal performance. And that's what I believe creates self-mastery. What we try to do is we try to integrate people into the sessions, into the programs, into the courses, and we use everybody around us. So we use intellectuals, politicians, entrepreneurs, etc. Because young people need to see these people and hear from these people in order to start building their own subconscious proximity to what their passion and their purpose is. So that's what we, it's grounded in that, in terms of a lot of the stuff that you'll see that we do within Value Ed. As I said, originally it was a high contact sport. So we went to schools, we went to universities, we went to colleges, et cetera, et cetera. Now, under the circumstances, we've decided to go on Zoom. Now, the change to Zoom was a very fortunate situation, in that it did a number of things. One, it created the capacity to scale. So I can have people from Limpopo and Cape Town, et cetera, on board. Actually, I don't even have to worry or think about it. Whereas before, I was pretty localized to when it came to schools, I was pretty localized to Soweto and then some of the neighboring colleges and universities. But now we're spreading this quite extensively. We're live and interactive over Zoom, as we're doing now, and day by day, moment by moment, improving the capacity to get across what we want to say better when we're doing it over Zoom, as opposed to what we were doing before, which was over contact. Sorry, I'm just going to come out of this and then go back in. One of the unfortunate Zoom features is that if you admit somebody into the call whilst you're actually on presentation, it stops the presentation. Something new I've just discovered. So I'm just going to stop this and then we'll go back in. Welcome, Ntombi. Let me just cancel the security so that people can just come in when they come in.
Thank you. Apologies for being late.
No problem, no problem. I hope this works. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we're still very much in this area where the youth are, and classically the youth are between the ages of as we say, between the ages of 18 and sort of 28. I know it goes to 35, but we use the sort of global context of youth in this context. So as I said earlier on, and by the way, Tim and Stacey, I think you've met Ntombi. Ntombi is also somebody from Value Ed. She's one of the co-creators. So she's joining us as well. We do have Tim still there. Is that right, Refilwe?
I'm still here.
Fantastic. Sorry, when you do presentations, you can't see everybody. So somehow you've disappeared off the screen. Okay. So I'm going to go into our courses and just reminding you that, we started off in July 2020 with one course. So when I started off and, left in 2019, started in 2020, COVID hit, literally spent between the periods of April and end of June trying to reposition this, learning about this online Zoom story, and then kicked off on the 1st of July with our self-mastery program. And this is it. And the self-mastery program actually is what we probably call the core part of Value Ed, because it's where we all started, or where it all started. And this really is 6 modules that we have that I've developed over a period of over the 10 years. And the idea here is, the sort of brief that I had 10 years ago is, how do I walk into a school, be given an hour, drop epiphanies and aha moments, leave, and hopefully those aha moments become something that is sustainable and substantiates the individuals. So I think we've fortunately managed to do that, because the conversation has to be one where young people do get it. And that's probably one of the core parts of the self-mastery element. These are the 6. We talk about preparation, we talk about choice, we talk about dreaming the plan, planning the dream, keep on keeping on, and defining your success. And at the end, I'll just run through very quickly some of the highlights of the self-mastery, very specifically in terms of what we do. So you saw that was 300 rands per month, and it includes those modules. We run one module once a month, and that module is split into two. So the program lasts a year because each of them have two elements to it or two parts to it. And we run one a month. And the reason why we run one a month is because there are additional offerings that we have within the 300 Rands self-mastery course. And the additional offerings that we have are something that we call the Leadership Masterclass. The Leadership Masterclass is when we bring in people from particular sectors or industries to talk to the youth around the macroeconomic view of that sector or industry. And obviously during this time, and as they're making life decisions, they need to have a perspective as to what's going on around them so that they're making informed decisions. And we've had a few of these. We've had actually 3 in the last. We run them alternate months, and I'll explain why. So we've had the financial sector, we've had the travel and tourism, and then we recently had the media sector that was done by Derek. We run them alternatively because in between that, we have what we call the Mogul Masterclasses. And the Mogul Masterclasses is where we bring subject matter experts to have very specific subject matter discussions. So in this case, for example, we had business and career planning towards the end of last year for 2021, and just giving young people the idea as to why and how to business plan for the future. And then the other element that we have that's also part of the 300 Rands encapsulated, and these offerings, by the way, are with all the courses. So not just the self-mastery, all this is part of the offering with all the courses over and above the actual modules and the courses, is one of my favorites, which is the Career Discussion Academy. The Career Discussion Academy came about as a result of this sort of thought concept of how young people are sort of grappling with the idea, not only of choosing a particular career, but also understanding the path. And Stacy, who's here, actually was the last one to do one, and she's a psychologist, and was able to talk not only about the skill or the very specific qualification of being a psychologist, but also about the path and the journey that she took to get there, because I think that's just as important for young people to know that it's not always a straight line between here now and where you're trying to get to. So this is where the sort of exciting parts of value add has happened over the last 6 months with the power of Refillware and Ntombi here, who have played an integral role in growing this. As I said, we started off with self-mastery, and we've progressed with other courses that are available. And the one course that we have available is the social media and personal branding, which is run actually by Refillware, and that's her skill set. We've got Valuepreneur. Valuepreneur is actually a program that was started to help people who are particularly starting businesses or within the first 1 to 3 years, maybe 5 years of business. And the idea here is to have business conversations. It's not curriculum based, it's purely how do I survive my first year of business, particularly over these times. Excuse the prices here. Some of these prices have changed, and I see this presentation didn't update, but I'll inform you as we go along. We've got a teachers and educators program, and then we also have the Career Discussion Academy that's on here as well. We have a marketing course. So maybe if I go back, the Teachers Academy is really, at the end of the day, the self-mastery one, but purely for teachers. And why did this come about? Well, simply because when I used to go for the last 10 years to schools and universities and colleges and talk to students, I'd always be asked by heads and principals to talk to the teachers. And normally I used to go, I don't want to do that. But eventually I mustered up the courage to actually do it and we've created a program for it. We also have a marketing course that's run by Chloe. She's got 25 years of brand marketing and sales experience. She runs this course. And again, these courses have come about because we do believe that young people need to consistently skill themselves, upskill themselves, and consistently learn, and not the theoretical element, the stuff that is practical, that links to life. Not knocking anything with regards to, some of the challenges that we have institutionally. But what's clear is that sometimes they leave some of the institutions without the practical knowledge of how to apply. And this is where we want to supplement. We want to work very closely with institutions and supplement that part of it. Then we have the networking part. This is brilliant. I mean, we're all on this course. People talk about networking as a skill until you actually listen to somebody who is a specialist in networking, and then you realize that you don't really know what you're doing. And so she runs this course in terms of the networking program. And then we started retrenchment and job uncertainty, what we've now titled Navigating Your Job Search. And really in these times, Elise, who runs a career transition, is a career transition specialist. And she really is trying to show people who are transitioning either through job uncertainty or through retrenchment, the way to work towards succeeding in your career transition. And actually, the marketing and the social media branding, personal branding, and the networking, they all go hand in hand because they all play an integral role in how you succeed. We've just started a program that literally kicked off this Saturday called Value Teens. Again, when I used to talk at colleges and universities and schools, people used to come to me and ask, hey, can you talk to the grade 7s, to the grade 10s or 9s? And I'd go, I can't do that. And eventually we found somebody who loves those young ones, even younger ones, and loves doing it. And she actually kicked off a first session, and it was brilliant this Saturday. And I can realize that that's a skill in itself, in terms of talking to an age group where you can communicate so that they can understand. We're also starting a online tutoring. That's going to be starting in the month of Feb, and we've got an overview. And this is going to be run by an intern teacher who's a gentleman who's done really well for himself. He's been actually doing interning in terms of teaching for the last 3 years. He's in his final year, the 4th year. And in that time, he's built quite a successful tutoring business. And of course, tutoring was very contact. He wants to go online, so we're co-partnering together to bring this. And we're going to start off with physics, maths, and accounting. And he's going to do an overview on sometime next week, the 2nd, in terms of how that's going to run. So it's opportune for young people to hear from young people in terms of how to learn certain subject matters. I think it makes it easier. And then Stacy, who I mentioned is on, is going to be starting a work readiness program. And work readiness, not just workplace, but work, the kind of things that you need to be equipped with and know in terms of how to engage and be ready for that interaction that takes place within the work and work environment. And she's going to be running an overview session on the 2nd as well, slightly earlier. And then will be followed up by the tutoring one. One of the things that we've also said is that between our programs and our courses, we're going to certify attendance. Why do we believe this is important? Well, I have a real strong belief in this element of young people having to learn to skill themselves, upskill themselves, reskill themselves, learn things, unlearn things. That's the one component. And this is what a platform that we're offering them to be able to do that and listen to specialist individuals who have really great skills in this. There's a couple of new programs that we're going to be starting probably only in March. One in robotics, AI, artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, etc. And then another one in programming a connected world, which are also being delivered by specialists in these areas, so that there is a strong correlation between what anybody is studying and learning, and also with what's happening in terms of the world. And we want people to be able to go back into the world and prove that they are consistently skilling and reskilling themselves. So the certificate of attendance is really to say, hey, I am doing this, and here's proof that I'm doing this because I did it at this place called Valued. As I said, and you're on this, We have overviews for all the programs. So before anyone jumps on, they can come on and try and find out about it to see whether it tickles their fancy with regards to joining or not. And they're actually with all of them. We've also started the capacity of onboarding. So everybody who comes on, new and otherwise, we're growing in terms of subscription numbers. We think we need to onboard people just to give them a land view of what's available with regards to programs. But also what we want to start creating over a period of time is a family of value-edians and a networking capability. So this will start growing into a networking capability. They can hear from value-edian alumni come and talk about how great or how terrible the program was, so that we're not necessarily just the ones who are trying to expose it. So the next one is actually on the 28th of Jan for anybody who comes on board or is brought on board. Refillware came to me and said to me, based on, let me just tell you about Elevate a little bit, based on this other program that we got called Elevate. Elevate is a program that really looks at probably what I would call sort of the higher echelons of management, where we look at things like relationships, where we look at things like on advisory, on HR, on law, and things like that, and then on leaderships and CEOs and boards, etc. And Refillware came to me and said, but why does that actually have to be limited to people of a certain ilk or a certain age? As young people, we are having these conversations. So we have, kicked off Elevate Youth, which will, when we have bodily contact again, because we really want to do this in the form of a podcast, be able to have interaction and engagements that people can participate, also live and interactive over Zoom, but being podcasted with guest speakers. Just another thing quickly, just in terms of value add, we have a number of events that we do. This is one of them, Celebrating Women events. These started in August last year with one. We ended up having 3 because they were so popular, and we've actually run one every month since then. And the next one will probably be, I think it's in sometime in February. So, and these are the guests that we've had, and it's really titled The Voice of Women. And they have conversations in terms of how they're raising and amplifying voices in the different sectors, whether it's be corporate, entrepreneurship, NPOs, entertainment, et cetera, et cetera. And Refillware hosts these and probes them with very difficult questions. The next one, yes, is on the 20th of February with Dr. Cesar Gele, who will be brought on. On Counterpart, we've introduced Men of Value. We've had 3 events of Men of Value. What is Men of Value? Here, we're intentionally trying to influence men to heighten their sense of self-appreciation and self-development, and also a lot of introspection, discussion around some of the challenges that men are very much involved in and how to solution against those. We bring in guests on occasions, but we have conversations as well, and are trying to walk away with what I would call the Bible of behavior for men, and understanding their roles and responsibility. We had an excellent a guest in the form of Craig Wilkinson, an author on several books on fatherhood, and runs an NPO on fatherhood, really talking about masculinity and what is a champion man and what is champion masculinity, and sort of completely demystifying the idea that all men are trash, basically, at the end of the day. We are coming up with another event, and hopefully I'd like to convert them into programs. Even the Men of Value and the Celebrating Men, we want to convert them into programs where it's not just once a month events where people just sit and listen, but young ladies and young men can get to grips with understanding some of these things a little bit more deeply. Know Your Country is something that we are going to be in conjunction with the Sunday Times. It's really going to be about trying to encapsulate the history of South Africa with young people so that they understand the context of South Africa, and in the context of the actual people who were there, both from a social, economic, and political background. So that's, we've already had one event, and we're looking to have a couple of other events. Tim, this is where this is not all the patrons, this is just some of them. I need to update this. We've got quite a few. If you go into our patrons page on the website, you'll see the patrons that are there, and we've got quite a few more since that as well, so we have to update that. But Our wall of patrons are people who are really sponsoring young students, and we do create that engagement between when necessary and also when needed, that engagement between the student and the patron in terms of meeting them and getting to understand what they do. But we do have, I think, something like 12 or 13 patrons at the present moment, and then we've got an additional 2 or 3 that are going to be there. The team made up of young ones with great ideas, great motivation, and also great stamina. So we're pushing forward at the rate of knots to try and get to where we want to get to. We're going to run through these slides literally in 2 minutes, just to give you an idea of the self-mastery course preparation. What we talk about, there's no promise without preparation. Well, we talk a lot about you reap what you sow, making young people. This is the starting point of that self-mastery element, making young people understand self. So starting with this, I love this quote: "You reap what you sow," because it all talks about you having to reap what you sow, and also the discussion about what is it that you're going to sow. So we try to demystify this construct that is not just simply about what goes around comes around. If you look at this, there's a lot of context in terms of how you cannot blame your environment, circumstances, situation, that if you want to reap, you need to sow. And everybody's there to support and help, but ultimately it's about you, and also having a clear understanding of who you are. We give them this is a picture that I normally give them, which is the epiphany picture. The preparation is the thing on the left-hand side. Everybody's imagining that thing on the right-hand side, but you're not going to go there if you're not going to do what's on the left-hand side. So we talk quite extensively about what is it that you're doing that equals the left-hand side. Because if you're not doing that, then you're never going to get to the right-hand side. And this is the element of understanding how you progress in your preparation processes. Example, which is also, I think, quite well known, is that everybody wants to decorate the house, but nobody wants to make the foundation. So the preparation process is critical to whether or not there's sustainability in whatever it is that you're building, making, or getting. Then we talk a lot about knowing yourself. Do you know yourself? How well do you know yourself? You came into this world very specifically for a task and a responsibility, and you have to spend time in terms of understanding what it is that you're going to sow. If you want to be an apple, you need to sow apple seed, and therefore you need to get to know yourself really, really well. And to know yourself, you have to spend time with that massive, monumental, unequivocal computer that you have in the back of where you have in your head, called your brain, where, in my belief, your entire destiny resides and is already built in. Like that whole process of the sperm and the ovary really invariably creates a human being, and it's predestined and preordained, so too is your destiny. But you have to spend time with yourself, know yourself, get to understand yourself in order to get there. Then choice, great quote from Mandela: "May your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears." And here we talk quite extensively about life is a buffet of options. How are you going to make choices? Are you going to make choices in terms of, what your, what decision, what your friends are doing, et cetera, or are you going to make those choices based on some really fundamental elements? Here we talk about the fact that you're making choices all the time, every single moment, whether to tell the truth, whether or not you're going to go out, what you're going to eat, whether or not you're going to stay in or go out and have the gym, et cetera, et cetera. People are making choices, but how are you defining those choices for yourself, and how and where they're coming from? And that we as human beings are the only creatures that have the option to actually make choices. Animals live on instinct. And what tends to happen is that we follow other people's light, right? Each of us have a light within us, and that light is our guiding light that takes us to where our destiny is meant to be. But what we tend to do is we follow the crowd of lights. And we must always remember that although we are one group of people, our destinies are very different. And therefore the way our light moves is also very different. And we need to be aware of that, because that's going to define some of the choices we make. The directions we go, left and right, very critical on choices. And young people make very easy choices at the beginning. Well, easy in the sense that we know better now as we get older, what they like, what they don't like, what friends they're going to have, which university they're going to go to, who they're going to date, what sport they're going to play. But as they progress in life, they're going to have to make more substantive choices. you know, in terms of where to live, their friendships, health related matters, who they're going to pick as a family, as a spouse members, et cetera, et cetera. So these are substantive choices and how you're going to make them. We start showing them how to create guiding principles. And guiding principles are the things that are absolutely sticklers to you in terms of decision-making processes. So when you say, I remember saying as a kid that I would never, ever even think about trying to take a drug, irrespective. And that was a guiding principle that I didn't realize then. But you've got to set these guiding principles for yourself to make sure that you're not tempted by anything else that comes along. Why? Because you reap what you sow. And then we talk about planning, dreaming the plan. Here we talk about visualizing and how to actually look into the future and start imagining, and the importance of that. There's a lot of elements that go into spending time with yourself and actually imagining the future and seeing as far as you can see, but remembering that you can imagine and visualize, that's free, but the actual process to get there is not free. And this is why we have to actually end up planning the dream. The importance of visualizing is because it detaches you from reality. And that's something we get into a lot of discussion about it. You're not limited by the bounds of your immediate, what you see, but you can focus on something that is a little bit more ahead, that's a little bit more imaginative, as opposed to your circumstances and your situations. Then we talk about planning it. Now that you've dreamt it, how do you plan it? How do you execute against that? And we look at the tools of learning how to set objectives, set goals, set tasks, taking those visions that are 3-5 years, writing them down, which is the most critical element. I harp on writing things down. Why? Because the relationship between, and the psychologist will tell you, the relationship between your eyes and your brain, where the largest part of your brain's looks after that sense more so than all the other senses put together, and that there's a strong relationship between what you visualize and how you actually behave. So it's critical to write things down. If it's in the head, it's just hope. Keep on keeping on is the second last program. It's really about resilience. It's about sustainability. It's about adaptability. There's a great quote that I like, that you are defined by two things: time and change. How do you use time, and how do you are able to change? And therefore, in this, keep on keeping on program, we say that your ability to move and to be adaptable and to be resilient are essential for you, or not only to fulfill the dream that you've fulfilled, to keep preparing and make the right choices, but to also get the end result that you're looking for. Great quote that I always use is, life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. You're going to have to learn how to dance in the rain. And in order to do that, you're going to have to be very clear about what your identity is. And you're going to have to be very clear about what your philosophy is around life. And we delve into that quite deeply. And then lastly, it's about defining your success. How do you actually define your success that you're looking for? Right now, it's all about materialism, how much I have, how much I can earn, and that's what actually leads people to corruption. Success may be other things that people don't even think about. It may be how much time you have available to you. It may be having pride in your work. It may be having good health, and that's a high level of definition of success in today's terms. How passionate you are, how ethical you are. So we try to guide young people to start thinking about these other constructs of success, as opposed to just the everyday understood ones. And just to end off, we're trying to direct people with all the programs in terms of the possibilities that are there and how they can contribute. We're trying to inspire them to prepare for their tomorrows, using what they have today, and remind them that, yeah, I know it's bleak times and difficult times now, even more so than before, and even more so when we see these pictures here. But the future is bright. We will come out of this. And that, they need to be accountable and responsible in terms of how that future looks, because we're all getting to that age where we're gonna move on. So I'm gonna end there, just to give a little time for conversation. Sorry, I whizzed through that end bit. I normally do, but I think we all know it. It's more just to give you a flavor of what it is that we dive into some of the subjects, and we dive into them quite extensively. I hope that made sense, particularly to Tim. I know the others have seen it a few times.
That made a lot of sense, leader. That made a lot of sense, and it's also exciting at the same time. Exciting at the same time, and it provokes you as well. It provokes a lot of things in one's mind, and I'm really excited to see what you guys are doing. Really great job, and I'm actually not even sitting here by myself. I'm sitting here with my wife. I was very, very passionate about youth and everything that has to do with inspiration and empowerment. And she's also an activist, you know, in her own right. So yeah, maybe she can just say 1 or 2 words.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Vikile.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Name is?
I must say, my name is Manti.
Oh, hi,
I must
Manti.
say, I had an exam. I was writing exam almost the whole day today. So I started at 8 and finished at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. So
Wow.
I was exhausted, and I took a nap. And I just woke up. And as I woke up, I'm hearing him being engaged, and I'm woken up by the words when he said, "No, I'm babysitting," and I'm like, "Oh my God." He didn't tell me he has a meeting, so I let me wake up.
He was being considerate.
So then yes, I'm very considerate like that. So I woke up, and I decided to sit here and just also listen to the presentation. And this presentation really hits home because, I mean, many of us have those kind of situation whereby you see young people, even in our own families, that are loitering and they don't have a sense of direction, and they seem kind of lost. And one can say this is deprived by, or is caused by, dysfunctional families. Dysfunctional families in a good and in a bad way. In a good way, in a sense that, not that parents choose to be absent, but it's just that, you know, we are consumed by a lot of things, by wanting to progress in regards to work, in regards to business, in regards to studies and so on. So we tend to forget that there are these beings who are still growing and that they need guidance. And in a bad way, whereby you just don't care. You say, you know what, you have your own life and make about it yourself. So when I'm listening to this, it's your programs are kind of giving guidance to young people. They're uplifting young people. They are teaching them to be in control of their own destiny. And the solution, and I'm not saying this to buy face, but the solution, honestly, it's these programs that you are busy with, Fikile. It is. And for them to grow up into responsible and alert adults that would have a vision and a life plan. So we need such programs. We need, some of us, we need to actually sponsor more young people into such programs. They do not need to be, you know, in an academic format and so on. Of course, because they should be aligned to how young people think and how young people behave. Young people dislike anything that is formal. So, because they get it, they're already getting enough formality at school. So programs such as yours, I believe, enables young people to be young and you know, speak of their frustrations and learn at the same time. So I would like to sincerely applaud you for the work that you have done, for the passion that God has entrusted you with. And believe me, you're on the right path, and we are here. We are definitely here to support you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was just 2 words there.
Thank you very much. And we have, you know, Stacy here is she's going to be doing the work readiness program, but she's a clinical psychologist as well. So and worked in universities with young people. So she's very au fait with, and I'm speaking for you now, Stacy. but very au fait with everything that you're saying with regards to, you know, the challenges young people have. And maybe Stacey, you want to share a little bit of your experiences and why you're so passionate about this.
Oh, most definitely. I think my passion is, it really stems from also from personal experience and growing up in a community that wasn't very privileged, and realizing that, at that stage, as young folk, didn't have access to psychologists and people who could talk to us about careers. And, getting to a point where I had to go to university and thinking, well, I don't know what I want to do. And believing if I had that guidance and that kind of information at sort of my fingertips, I would have been able to make different kinds of decisions at that stage. And that's where my passion and drive comes from, is wanting to share that kind of knowledge with the youth in our country, and really empowering them to make decisions and choices that are going to be beneficial for them going forward, and be citizens that can contribute to our society in a way that is going to really develop our country, and make our country even better than it already is.
No, absolutely.
So that's really, for me, where my drive comes from and my passion. And, for me, I want to contribute to our youth because they are our leaders, and they are going to take us places. So that's where I come from in terms of wanting to do this.
You don't count, Refiwa, because for some reason you have managed to find the path and are just riding it. So
I still count.
we're talking about those who are, challenged a little bit and still figuring it out. But I mean, having said that, I mean, you're a shining example. Refiwa is a shining example of when you do get it right. I mean, she's you just turned 27, 26, 27, and
27.
and the the enthusiasm and the direction and the positivity and the optimism and the is all there. And if I had half of that at 27, I'd be significantly further down the line by now. But yeah, I mean, when you do get it and you get it right, it's fantastic. So yeah, let's help all those who challenge. Fantastic.
Great.
Tim, I just to ask, are you working with young people as well, or where did I get that in my head too? Are you both working with young people, or?
Of course, we are, Mr. V. We do work with young people. And that's why I'm saying I'm very excited to hear what you guys are busy with, and the content you guys cover. It's so relevant, and it's so on the spot, and I'm sitting here, I'm listening to you, and I'm like, I see so many synergies, I see so many possibilities that we could work together in. Between myself and my wife and other few people, we've established an organization called Ensako Black Unity Society. Part of what the organization does is focus solely on what you guys do.
Wow.
We try to do that. Although we actually it's still very early days, but that's the plan. That's a vision to work with young people. We have someone that deals with that's responsible for that division on youth empowerment. So if you like, I'll send you some information of what about what we do. Yeah, and then see how we can work together. And like my wife said, I'm more than willing to put my head on the block and say that we ourselves personally will try and see how we can support a few young people. We'll also try and see how we can create a platform for you guys to also share this type of information on our in our space, where we find ourselves.
Oh, fantastic.
I see that as one of the ways that you can expand your reach as well from what you guys are doing. I also wanted to check maybe how do you guys recruit? Do you just do webinars, or is it just by word of mouth, or how do you guys recruit from your side?
Oh, so in terms of how we get students, we, as you know, your wife mentioned, we know quite a few students in the diaspora who we try to bring in based on just knowing them. That's the first thing. The second one is
Okay.
with students at schools, we work with a couple of schools where we've got students directly from schools. Unfortunately, tragically, one of the schools we work with, Meadowlands High School, the principal there a week ago passed away from COVID. So it's been a bit tragic
Sorry, mate.
on that
Sorry
one.
to hear that.
Thanks very much. But we do work with several principals to get them in from students. And then the other thing is just engaging with individuals who will say, look, I have somebody who would benefit from the program. What we're trying to do as much as possible is to bring young people on, because you've also got to have that, certainly you don't have to be a full tank of a level of hunger, but you also have to have that, driving ambition to want to be part of the program. We've got really amazing young kids who are on the program who just, can't get enough of it. We've got 1 or 2 or 3 programs running simultaneously, and they were in grade 12 as well. So we were even having to say to them, back off a little bit, focus on the studies.
Awesome.
They're really
Awesome.
very hungry. So that's the kind of group that we're really trying to build up. We will, by the end of Feb, have about close to 90 people who have subscribed since the 1st of July, which is,
Okay.
we're marching along relatively well. So yeah, we normally get people into the room. We're using, there's also interns. We've got a couple of our patrons who have interns at their jobs who've just arrived from either graduates or whatever, and they're bringing those interns saying, hey, this boy's great, just needs a little support here and there, and they're coming onto the programs. And then we also have those who are just self-joining themselves.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for that. And just in terms of the courses themselves, I see that you mentioned that they do get some form of certification when they're done. Is it just a certificate of attendance, or would it, at some point be a certificate of what, an accredited certificate? So?
Yeah, we're building up to that. It's definitely something that we want to get to eventually. But in my mind, what's going to be critical for young people of the future is to be able to show that they're continuously learning. That the more you have proof, firstly you need to be able to articulate what you're learning, and secondly you need to be able to show that you've actually applied it. And I think that's going to be, as you know, probably, and will agree, that the qualification elements very useful and still needed, but that's not going to be there are 100 CVs that land on a table with qualifications. But what somebody's going to ask you as a critical question is, what do you bring? And if you can say, hey, look, I bring the capacity to be able to understand the constructs of networking, and this is how I think we should network as a business, or I came from IT, but I'm actually learning this marketing, or I'm actually driving myself to become a better person by propelling myself through courses like, work readiness. Those kind of ways of articulating going to be significantly more important than Vic trying to explain his degree that he did 30 years ago in somewhere, and he can't even remember a thing from it. So we're trying to get young people to say, look, prove that you are constantly improving yourself, and that's going to be a critical stepping stone skill. Eventually, yes, we'll drive it to accreditation, but as you know, Tim, the bureaucracy with those kind of things will be,
I know,
it'll take another 10 years.
You said, you guys.
Yeah, no, it takes a while. And just in terms of the uptake, do you see them starting and completing the program, or what's been the experience like, Bravik?
It's a good question. So we started this in July with no one subscribed. We turning the corner in February with probably about 90. And if we've had 3 or 4, Dombi will probably be better, 4 people who've dropped out, and the dropout hasn't actually been that. One has been, to be frank, one has been somebody who said, look, I can't afford it at the moment. And we actually sponsored him, and I think pride got in the way and said, look, I don't really want to be sponsored. I want to do this myself. The other one actually says, I got a job and I'm about to go into third year university, so let me join again in February. So we haven't had, look, this is rubbish and we don't like it. We're leaving. They've actually been quite legitimate for people to stop, but we've only had about 4 who for one reason or other have come off the program. So our retention is actually a lot stronger than I ever imagined it to be. But it's actually down to the specialists that speak, like Stacey's, like Elise's, like Claudie's. These are people who are experienced in what they do, and what they're talking about. So and also relate, because this is not so much about just the content that you're delivering, but the passion you have for the people that you're delivering the content to. And sometimes institutions can be, the professor can be very methodical in terms of what he's delivering, but maybe the passion is gone. So I think there's a warmthness that's beginning to be ascribed to that.
Awesome, and thank you so much for that. Just maybe just one last question for me, or if not a comment. The cost attached to it, I see it's very, very low. How do you get to that cost?
Good question, Tim. So the premise of this is 2 things, and it just came again, a philosophy of mine. When you're online and you have and I'll just use now the sort of commercial model, and then I'll explain the sort of philosophical reason. When you're online and you have limited cost in terms of input cost, your priority to grow is scaling. So retention and scaling, those are 2. So at that cost, as you scale, the numbers start speaking for themselves. So I actually believe in utilizing, the fact that we don't have rental and all that sort of thing. So that's mainly the commercial model. The philosophical reason is access. I'm a real believer that in any form of learning or look, to be quite frank, half the stuff that we're showing here, they can go onto YouTube and get for free, right? So, but learning, I have a deep philosophy that the future of learning is about access. And that means everyone has the right to learn, beyond what they've got to. So you can't be defined by the fact that you failed matric, or you can't be defined by the fact that you can't afford to do tertiary education. There must be avenues for young people to go to be able to access knowledge and information, particularly from people who are skilled and experienced. And that's what we're trying to create the philosophy of here. In terms of how the business grows, it will be scale. The numbers will end up having a hockey stick effect. That always happens with online. Starts off gently, and then all of a sudden, you're on a multiplier effect. So I'm not too worried from the commercials point of view. But if we really wanted to create access, whether you're in Limpopo and a student studying there, or whether you're a student in Sandton, if this goes for you, you both must be able to walk into this and have access.
Awesome. I'm happy, man. I must say that I don't know, from my website, from Manti's site, I'm actually sold. I'm sold, and I'm looking forward to probably potentially working together with you guys and seeing how we can either scale or share ideas, or however way we can see this thing becoming a success. Keep up what you guys are doing. You're doing a great job, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
I always want to become part of someone or something that inspires confidence, that inspires our young people to grow. Maybe just one thing before I forget. You mentioned that you go to schools and universities and stuff. What happens to those who do not go to school?
Yeah,
those who are sitting at home and they don't have anywhere to go. Yeah.
No, that's a very valid question, and really no answer, Tim. It's the whole idea of this is when we get past the COVID world, we need to take this to as many people as possible. And to your point, even those that, you know, the grade 12s that who finished school but didn't make it to tertiary and are just, you know, and there's a lot of them. And particularly in Soweto, I began to see over the last 3 or 4 years, the amount of kids dropping out of school. And the reason they were dropping out was really more frightening than ever, because if you have 2 siblings, one in grade 8 and another one in grade, you know, let's say 11, and finishes grade 12 and then loiters because there's nothing for him to do after that. The grade 8, who's now grade 9 or grade 10, thinks, what's the point of me going through all this? Because there's no end result that comes from this. And then they drop out. So that's a big group of people that are really, you know, in a vacuum because they're not being accessed in more ways than one. And one really needs to think about how to access them.
Good. Thank you so much, man. I think I've got enough on my plate, and what I'm going to do is I'll look. Like I said, we have this organization that we have running. I'll take this back to the leadership and present it to them. If needs be, we'll definitely try and get you guys to also do a presentation for them. And like I said, I don't think they'll have a problem with you guys sharing the platform, our platform, to you know, sort of use it for the success of what you guys are doing. I don't think that that'll be a problem at all. But from my side, I'm happy to have been invited. I'm inspired, and it's good to be around people who think like you think. And the other one that that caught my eye is the men of value. Men of value, and yes. I'm quite interested in that one. I guess I'll get more information as we interact.
Yes, we'll Ntombi, I'll just ask her to make sure you're on the database with Refill, so that when we send out that information for the next minutes, that definitely included that and you can join in.
Please.
Absolutely.
Yes.
No, fantastic.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Refill. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Tim, nice to meet you. Bye.
It was a pleasure.
Take care.
It was a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.